The flagship Aegis Dawn slid through the dark, like a cathedral of steel and light. Captain Ilara Voss said, "Hold formation and amplified deep scan." Her calm cut through the hum of engines and the ache of distance. "Atul to Interstellar." Commander Ryan Holt said, "Contacts ahead are irregular and shifting." His fingers danced over holograms that trembled like blue glass. The crew felt the ship breathe, a patient giant waking in increments. Outside, stars twitched as if remembering old wars. The fleet trailed behind in disciplined tiers, patient and hungry. Ilara measured the void, then measured herself against it. She said, "Whatever waits there, it has noticed us." Ryan said, "We can still alter course and live to map it later." The hull answered with a low, possessive shiver. In the viewing pane, a pallid flare coiled like a question mark. The unknown beckoned with the quiet of a closed door and the promise of a lock. Humanity pressed forward because it had nowhere else to go. The council chamber aboard Aegis Dawn was a ring of light and shadows. Captain Ilara Voss said, "We will not scatter at the first whisper of strangeness." Her words fell like pins on velvet. Commander Ryan Holt said, "Risk is a tool only if we shape it." The fleet envoys watched, wary and calculating. Charts floated like stained glass windows around them. The anomaly pulsed in miniature, a knot of pale fire. Ilara said, "We approach to mapping range and no further." Ryan said, "Sensors at maximum fidelity and weapons cold." The chamber acknowledged with a low chime, polite and inevitable. Humanity had learned to vote inside storms and then sail into them. Outside the hull, silence arranged itself with surgical care. The cartography bay woke with layered music of sensors and code. Technician Marin Dao said, "Spectral return is non-local and recursive." Commander Ryan Holt said, "Translate recursion into threat." The map inflated into a luminous helix, teasing edges of causality. Captain Ilara Voss said, "Find its rhythm, and we will find its door." The crew tracked phantoms through matrices like fishermen following tide lines. Each loop fed the next, hungry and precise. Heat signatures refused to be heat. Mass pretended to be rumor. Ryan said, "It is either wounded or waiting." Ilara said, "We will treat it as both." The helix slowed, as if listening through the glass. The memorial corridor carried names etched into carbon glass. Pilots walked slower there without speaking. Captain Ilara Voss said, "We inherit debt so we can pay forward futures." Commander Ryan Holt said, "And we pay an attention first." Their reflections slid over the letters like drifting rain. The anomaly's pale light arrived even here, a ghost at the threshold. Ilara paused at a cluster of names from a lost convoy. She said, "They remind us why we count twice." Ryan said, "And why we go anyway." The ship hummed around them like a distant organ. Far ahead, the corridor narrowed toward a single point of light. The fleet assembled in a crescent around the unknown, every ship a vow sharpened to a point. Captain Ilara Voss said, "Transmit our greeting on all peaceful channels." Her voice steadied the air. Commander Ryan Holt said, "Weapons indexed but sealed." The anomaly tightened like a fist, then opened like a throat. A whisper threaded every deck, not sound but suggestion. Ilara said, "Record everything and assume nothing." The helmsman breathed in time with the engines. In the viewport, pale radiance washed the stars and gave them new names. Ryan said, "If it answers, it will answer in its language." Ilara said, "Then we will learn it without surrender." The crescent held. The anomaly swelled to fill half the viewport, its spirals folding and unfolding like thought made visible. Captain Ilara Voss said, "Bring us to the threshold, no closer." The ship obeyed with a predator's patience. Commander Ryan Holt said, "Spectrograph reads, unbound." His voice caught on the word. The fleet drifted in disciplined arcs, their navigation lights like embers in black water. The anomaly breathed in slow pulses, each one bending the stars as if they were reflections in deep waves. Elara said, log every distortion. The hull tremored, a soft pressure passing through metal and bone. Somewhere in the lower decks, a panel groaned. Outside, light twisted into impossible angles. Humanity hovered on the edge of something older than language and sharper than gravity. The science wing's walls shimmered with live data streams. Analyst Kieran Moss said, it's pulling background radiation forward, like it's feeding on time itself. Captain Elara Voss said, then it's alive in a way we've never met. Commander Rian Holt said, alive, things can choose to notice us. The anomaly's pulse threaded through the deck, sensing briefly with heartbeats. Monitors flashed amber as mass readings danced without pattern. Kieran's hands hesitated over the controls. Elara stepped closer to the display, her face haloed in cold light. She said, we will meet it as explorers, not prey. Outside, the distortion deepened, and the stars seemed to lean in to watch. The fleet's formation shifted subtly, ships rotating to expose their reinforced flanks. Admiral Liranki said, this is not retreat, this is readiness. Her voice cut through comms like a drawn blade. Captain Elara Voss said, we will not fire unless we are struck. Rian Holt said, the stars themselves might disagree with that rule. Engines hummed in layered harmonics as ships realigned. From the anomaly's edge, a thread of light uncoiled and began to drift toward them, moving with the casual certainty of a tide. The entire bridge held its breath, as the distance closed one measured heartbeat at a time. The tendril of light reached the Aegis Dawn's prow and stopped. No contact, no impact, just proximity that felt like recognition. Captain Elara Voss said, log the exact second it arrived. Ryan Holt said, sensors can't agree if it's touching us or not. The air tasted faintly of ozone. Somewhere a child aboard a transport ship began to cry without knowing why. The bridge lighting dimmed for a moment, as though the ship were blinking. Elara kept her gaze locked forward. She said, it's waiting for us to speak first. The crew understood instinctively that silence was now a kind of language. In the comm chamber, the fleet prepared its first words. Linguist Arden Vale said, we will build a greeting from mathematics, something older than speech. Captain Elara Voss said numbers first, then rhythm, then tone. Ryan Holt said, and if it answers with none of those? Arden's eyes were shadowed in the light of the transmission sphere. Then it has nothing to say, or everything at once. The room filled with the slow pulse of coded light, each sequence an offering to the unknown. Outside, the tendril swayed once like a listening gesture. In that moment, the distance between human and not human became thin as breath. The reply came without warning. No sound, no signal, just a pattern of shifting light within the tendril, mirrored in every fleet viewport. Captain Elara Voss said, it heard us. Commander Rian Holt said, it's translating? The lights pulsed in sequences that bent time perception, stretching moments into hours. On the bridge, the crew's breathing slowed to match the rhythm. A faint vibration threaded the deck, not mechanical but something stranger, as though the ship were resonating with an invisible choir. Elara said, record and parse at triple fidelity. Rian's jaw tightened. What if this is the answer? And the question all at once. The stars outside seemed dimmer, as if leaning back to give the conversation space. The cartography bay projected the light sequences in 3 dimensions, a shifting lattice that refused symmetry. Analyst Kieran Moss said, it's folding our transmission back on itself, changing it. Captain Elara Voss said, so it's speaking in reflection. Rian Holt said, or mocking us. The lattice spun faster, throwing fractured shadows across the walls. The operators tracked variables like hunters, reading spoor. Elara's eyes never left the display. It wants us to follow, she said. In the silence that followed, the lattice slowed and elongated toward a single glowing vector pointing deeper into the anomaly's heart. The Fleet Council convened again, their faces lit by the glow of the anomaly streaming in through the chamber's viewport. Admiral Lyron Keyes said, if we follow, we cross into an uncharted gravitational domain. Captain Elara Voss said, That is precisely why we came. Ryan Holt said, ships that go in may not come back the same. The air was heavy with the weight of history's losses and ambitions. Outside, the tendril of light coiled slowly, as if waiting. Elara's voice carried steady through the stillness. This is the choice that defines the fleet's name in centuries to come. Engines roared to full readiness across the fleet, vibration deepening the air like a distant drumbeat. Captain Ilara Voss said, "Form narrow spearhead formation." Commander Ryan Holt relayed orders with precise economy. Hull plating shifted, weapons stayed sealed, and navigation arrays aligned toward the anomaly's core. In the starboard view, the pale tendril unraveled and drew back into the main spiral, as if opening a corridor. Ilara said, "This is the door." The fleet began to move, their collective motion slow, deliberate, and irreversible. As the fleet crossed the anomaly's threshold, the universe fractured and reassembled in new geometry. Stars bent into arcs that circled nothing. Time felt elastic, moments stretching thin, then snapping back. Captain Ilara Voss said, "Maintain all logs, even the impossible." Ryan Holt said, "Sensors can't agree what we're seeing." The corridor of light narrowed and curved upward, leading them deeper. Engines whispered now, their roar swallowed by the medium they moved through. The crew felt lighter, their thoughts quickening as if the air itself was sharpening them. Humanity had stepped inside the unknown, and it had closed behind them. Inside the anomaly, space carried a fluid quality, as though the ships were gliding through an ocean of light. Captain Ilara Voss said, "Adjust inertial dampers to adaptive mode." Commander Ryan Holt said, "Navigation is guessing in real time." The corridor shimmered with colors never catalogued, each hue shifting with the ship's movement. Crew members felt a faint pulling sensation behind their eyes, like a thought trying to take shape. Ilara kept her hands steady behind her back, every muscle trained against awe. "Record sensory anomalies," she ordered. The hull groaned faintly, not from strain but from something like recognition. Outside, the corridor began to curve into a spiral with no visible center. The cartography bay's displays twisted into impossible projections, maps folding back on themselves, routes leading to their own beginnings. Analyst Kieran Moss said, "We're charting the same point from different directions." Captain Ilara Voss said, "Then either space is lying, or we are." Ryan Holt said, "Space doesn't lie." The holographic helix from earlier reappeared, but now its threads pulsed with colors matching the corridor outside. Ilara stepped forward, her reflection caught in every mirrored surface. She said, "Follow the pulse, not the path." The crew obeyed, hands moving with the same rhythm as the light. A sudden flare burst across the corridor, throwing sharp shadows over the bridge. Warning tones chimed low and steady. Commander Ryan Holt said, "Gravity fluctuation ahead, origin unknown." Captain Ilara Voss said, "All ships, adjust vector 5 degrees starboard." The fleet complied, but the flare's light moved with them, as if tethered. The hull plating rippled faintly, like a skin reacting to touch. In the silence between orders, the crew felt an unspoken message. This place was watching them, and it wanted to see what they would do next. In the observation dome, the anomaly's inner horizon revealed itself, a vast sphere of shifting light, its surface rippling like water over stars. Linguist Arden Vale said, "This is the center's skin." Captain Ilara Voss said, "It's a boundary, not a barrier." Ryan Holt said, "Then where's the door?" Arden pointed at a slow, rhythmic darkening in one section of the sphere. "There." The captain's gaze locked on the pattern. "Prepare for approach." The room's curved glass caught every flicker, making it feel like they were already inside. The fleet advanced toward the darkening section, formation tightening instinctively. Captain Ilara Voss said, "Transmit the greeting again." The pulses of light played out into the corridor, reaching the sphere's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dark patch widened into a passage, its edges glowing with pale fire. Ryan Holt said, "Doors open." Ilara's voice was steady. "Then we go through, together. Engines swelled, and the crescent formation angled forward, slipping into the unknown once more. Crossing the sphere's threshold felt like stepping through a membrane. Pressure shifted, and every light dimmed to a dreamlike glow. Captain Ilara Voss said, "Status?" Commander Ryan Holt said, "Systems stable, readings inconclusive." Outside there was no starfield. Only a vast expanse of shifting color and shadow, like an ocean without a surface. The ship's navigation lights cast halos in the strange medium, their reflections stretching and warping. Ilara said, "Maintain formation and observe." A deep, slow pulse echoed through the void, not in sound, but in the bones of everyone aboard. The air carried a subtle metallic taste, as if the place itself was inside them now. The cartography bay's maps failed entirely, only a blank grid flickering at irregular intervals. Analyst Karen Moss said, "We're somewhere, but nowhere it can measure." Captain Ilara Voss said, "Then we'll find our own markers." Ryan Holt said, "Manual bearings in a place without bearings." Ilara glanced at the viewport feed. "We use what it gives us." Outside, shadows moved against the color field, massive shapes whose outlines dissolved before they could be fully seen. Every few seconds, a shimmer passed over the hull like a phantom current. From the depths of the color field, a shape emerged, smooth, massive, and impossibly slow, like a mountain drifting in water. Linguist Arden Vale said, "It's not just moving, it's adjusting to us." Captain Ilara Voss said, "All ships hold course, do not provoke." The shape's surface rippled, revealing patterns like written language, but the symbols shifted too quickly to read. Ryan Holt said, "That's not random, it's showing us something." Ilara kept her voice even. "Then keep watching until we understand." The alien patterns intensified, their glow matching the pulse felt in the crew's bones. Analyst Kieran Moss said, "It's sensing with us." Captain Ilara Voss said, "Or pulling us into its rhythm." The fleet's engines responded oddly, power fluctuations matching the light sequences. Ryan Holt said, "If we keep moving forward, we might not be steering anymore." Ilara's gaze didn't waver. "Then we learn where it wants us to go." The drifting mountain shape slowly pivoted, revealing a hollow within, dark and inviting. The fleet followed the turning shape into its hollow, and the world shifted again. Inside was a chamber vast enough to swallow planets, lit by columns of energy like frozen lightning. Captain Ilara Voss said, "This is not a ship." Ryan Holt said, "Then what is it?" Arden Vale's voice was quiet. "A memory." The columns flickered with images, fleets, worlds, and beings unrecognizable to human eyes. Some scenes glowed warmly, others burned with violence. Ilara said, "It's showing us its history." The thought struck them all at once. They had stepped into the mind of something ancient. The memory chamber's columns shifted, their images warping until human ships appeared among the alien visions. Captain Ilara Voss said, "It's incorporating us." Commander Ryan Holt said, "Or it's predicting us." The scenes replayed human history in fragments. First contact wars, colony exoduses, moments of triumph and collapse. The light within each column pulsed in time with the fleet's collective heartbeat, measured and slow. Ilara said, "Feed it our open records." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were fixed on a single column, where the Aegis dawn burned and reformed again and again. Outside the bridge, the alien chamber seemed to lean closer. The images began to react to the crew's presence. When a helmsman flinched, a nearby column showed battles. When another smiled faintly, a column bloomed with green worlds. Linguist Arden Vale said, "It's not just showing, it's conversing." Ryan Holt said, "Then it's judging." Ilara Voss said, "It's listening to every choice we've made." The alien light began to slow, as though waiting for the fleet's next move. Ilara's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Respond carefully." A deep resonance filled the chamber, vibrating through the ships. The central column's light condensed into a single stable image, an uncharted star system, its planets marked in pale gold. Ryan Holt said, Coordinates? Analyst Kieran Moss said, yes, navigable. Elara Voss said, it's offering us a path. Arden Vale said, or a test. The resonance deepened, and the surrounding columns faded to darkness, focusing all attention on the golden system. The fleet hung in stillness, engines idling like held breath. The chamber began to shift again, walls folding inward like petals closing. Ryan Holt said, it's pushing us toward the exit. Elara Voss said, all ships align to the coordinates given. The fleet formed tight formation as the columns collapsed into streams of light, flowing toward the hollow's opening. The resonance became a single steady tone that echoed in every chest. No ship's sensors registered the walls moving, yet everyone could feel the closing space pressing them forward. The fleet emerged from the hollow into the shifting ocean of light, but the way back was gone. Behind them, the chamber's walls had sealed without a seam. Ahead, the golden star system hung impossibly close, as if the anomaly had carried them there in an instant. Captain Elara Voss said, set course for the nearest planet. Ryan Holt said, still reading no elapsed time. The anomaly pulsed once, a final acknowledgement, before fading into the distant void. Humanity had been given a destination, and perhaps a judgment still waiting to be delivered. The golden star rose in the viewport like a living jewel, its light pouring into the fleet's hulls in waves that felt warmer than heat. Captain Elara Voss said, bring us into planetary orbit, and hold above the equator. The helm acknowledged in hushed tones, as though afraid to disturb the scene. Commander Ryan Holt leaned over the console. Gravity and atmosphere. Readings show Earth-like balance, but composition is subtly different. Below, a planet glimmered with oceans like molten brass, catching the sunlight in liquid flashes. Its continents sprawled in vast, deep green patterns that curved in ways unfamiliar to human mapping. Wisps of clouds traced delicate arcs between sea and land, their golden illumination making them look carved from fine metal. The crew's reflections floated over the horizon in the viewport, eyes drawn downward with an unblinking hunger to see more. Elara's tone carried the weight of arrival. Prepare descent procedures, no haste. Let this world know we come with care. Engines thrummed softly, adjusting their vectors as if each movement should be deliberate, reverent, and exact. From the flagship's lower hangar, shuttles disengaged one by one, their silver hulls catching and bending the sunlight into streaks of gold. Ryan Holt's voice was calm but clipped. Descent trajectories locked. Landing sites show no artificial heat signatures, no settlements, no movement. Elara Voss replied, then the welcome is written in the soil, not the sky. The shuttles tipped forward, gliding toward the planet's upper atmosphere. As they breached the first cloud layers, a veil of golden mist drifted across their viewports. Below, sprawling river systems wound between deep forested valleys, the water's surface shimmering faintly, as though lit from within. Mountains rose in sloping arcs, their peaks dusted not in snow, but a mineral sheen that glowed pale silver in the sun. The pilots kept their controls feather-light, aware of every shift in wind resistance. Clouds broke and reformed in slow tidal motions, casting long-moving shadows across untouched land. Inside the shuttle cabins, the filtered air carried faint traces of something floral yet metallic, a scent that left crew members both unsettled and strangely comforted. The landing site was chosen for visibility, a vast plateau edged by steep cliffs that dropped into a rolling brass-colored sea. The surface underfoot was a soft, dark gold soil that seemed to breathe faint warmth into boots. Captain Elara Voss was first to step down the ramp, her stance upright, her shadow stretching long against the plateau's glow. She said, mark this, first human contact with the surface of the golden world. Ryan Holt scanned the horizon, visor down against the glare. No movement, no tracks. If this place has life, it's keeping its distance. The air was impossibly clear, the sun's light diffused into a steady brilliance without the harsh bite of midday. Around the plateau's edge, alien flora stood in graceful arcs, tall fronds swaying in perfect unison with an unfelt wind. Far below, the sea caught light and sent it skyward in fractured beams, as though returning the sun's gift. The crew spread methodically, instruments unfolding like insect wings, each reading stored for study. Somewhere beneath the hum of equipment, the planet's own low vibration could be felt in the bones, steady as a heartbeat. Without warning, a point on the plateau's far side shimmered, as though the air had been struck like a bell. The ground beneath it rippled, rising into a vast crystalline structure. Its form curved upward and locked into place as a monumental arch, tall enough to swallow a city gate. Light flowed inside its body, running in repeating pulses that mirrored the sequence from the anomaly's corridor. Elara Voss's voice was level, but tinged with recognition. It followed us. Reinhold's gaze sharpened. Or this is where it wanted us all along. The pulses quickened, changing hue, gold to emerald to pale silver, each shift oddly synchronized with the fleet's medical telemetry. Crew members glanced at their own wrist displays and saw their heart rates match the arch's glow perfectly. Elara stepped forward, boots leaving faint impressions in the soft ground. The reflected light rippled across her face, shifting her features in surreal gradients. She paused at the base, close enough to hear a faint glass-like hum from within the crystal's core. "Whatever this is," she said quietly, "it's listening to us breathe." The arch's inner light intensified until the air itself seemed to vibrate with harmonic tones, low and layered. Images began to weave across its surface, alien landscapes under unfamiliar suns, human cities seen from impossible heights, moments from the fleet's journey reframed from an outside perspective. Reinhold said, "It's offering a bridge." Elara's eyes stayed fixed on the shifting visions. "Between what we were," she said slowly, "and what we might become." The images shifted again, showing the fleet itself, both as it was and as something transformed, sleeker, stranger, interwoven with patterns from the anomaly's pulse. The hum deepened into a resonant chord that seemed to pull gently at everyone's center of gravity, as though urging them forward. Elara took one deliberate step toward the arch, and the images inside swirled into a tunnel of light stretching beyond sight. "We're being invited in," she said. The crew behind her stood at the edge between instinctive caution and uncontainable wonder. The wind across the plateau carried no scent, no sound, only the steady pulse of the arch, waiting for a decision that would shape the future of more than just humanity.